Hey, I'm Morgan.
I'm Chris. Welcome to the Midlife Mud,
where we're going to bring the real shit, all the grit, and zero clue of what to do in these middle years.
Oh, and by the way, because this is all about feeling less alone, we really want to hear from you too.
Yeah, don't leave us hanging. We'd love it if you'd take a sec to visit themidlifemud.com and leave us a message.
All right, tighten those boots and let's get going.
Welcome back to the mud.
I have a question.
What's the question?
If I'm having a hard time counting to 10, is this a good time to do this show?
You need to go take a nap.
Oh my God.
I know. I don't know why. No, that's a really dumb thing I almost said. I almost said I don't know why I'm so tired.
Happy holidays.
Yeah. We're recording this the week before Christmas. And it's just that, run-of-the-mill shit show, pre-Christmas crap.
I call it the holiday glaze.
That's a good way to describe it. Of course, we have not really done any actual Christmas stuff. You did some Christmas stuff over this past weekend, right?
Oh, I've been Christmasing a lot.
The Christmasing.
The wrapping, the associated back pain, the Christmas parties.
Do you wrap standing up or sitting down?
I create a station at the kitchen table and I wrap there.
That's very wise.
That's what I do. Yeah.
I try to find a way to do it on my bed, which is horrible. It's the worst idea.
The problem with the kitchen table is that if you have kids in the house,
I know,
or anyone that you're wrapping the presents for, it doesn't work unless you put the kitchen table in your bedroom.
Right.
But that could also cause back pain.
Really what I do is I lock myself in my bedroom and I, quote, wrap presents for like hours with, Netflix on in the background. And I'm probably taking a break a lot more than I'm actually wrapping, but the kids don't know that. Although the 10-year-old is usually sitting outside the door waiting for, I'm all ready for presents, Mom. You just let me know when you got some and I'll put them under the tree.
Your 10-year-old, I think, is actually a reincarnated elf.
She truly is.
She has, and I say that because of her energy. Like she's very
sprightly.
Yes, that was the word. That was exactly the word I was going to use. So what the hell are we talking about today?
Well, today, interestingly, in our fog of fatigue, we are talking about asking for help and all that comes with that. And really, when you and I were kind of preparing for this episode, we kind of thought it through and realized that there's kind of different kinds of help that come up. So we're going to talk about those and share some stories of our own mostly about how we failed to ask for help soon enough, and kind of what that potential cost of not asking for help is, because I think it's a pretty common thing.
Yes. And the interesting thing for me about this episode is that I think I was the one that initially said, let's do it about asking for help. And then I spent a lot of time thinking about it, and it was hard.
I know.
It was really difficult.
You needed help thinking about needing help.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. And that's curious too. Like, why would that be such a challenge? Because the thing I know about myself, I am independent to a fault. And so I'm horrible at asking for help. So I know I have stories of me not asking for help abound. And yet it was hard for me to kind of really nail some of them down. So the first kind of help that we wanted to talk about is just your run-of-the-mill help with tasks, like asking someone to share the responsibility with you on something. And so this is midlife, right? Like we've got 8 billion chores and responsibilities and things that we have to do.
No, not in my midlife.
No, you suck. And so how, it can be really easy to, and I'll speak from like a mom point of view right now. I don't know what it's like for you, but it's very easy for me to think, okay, all of the stuff is my responsibility. I have to do all of it. And that's just kind of a recipe for burnout over time. So I'm going to share a little story with you. I don't know if I've ever told you this story or not. It's an older story. It happened, I wasn't quite in midlife. I wouldn't say. It was in my 30s, but it still rings true today. So I had just had our fourth the little sprightly elf child. I had just had her. She was a little bit of a difficult newborn because she had some difficulty nursing and stuff. So I had a lot of stuff related to that I had to deal with. And then, of course, we had the 3 boys and, getting dinner on the table and keeping up with the chores and all of the things and working for that matter. And I remember this one morning, and all of you moms know, like I had fed our daughter and like timed it just so that I could get dressed, get the boys out the door to preschool, which was like a 25-minute drive to get them there and then get back. And then by the time you get back, you got to feed the baby again and all this kind of stuff. Like I had it timed down to the minute, and I had planned to have a crock pot meal that day. And so I was going to like feed the baby and then make the crock pot meal and start it. And of course, crock pot meals take 8 hours to cook, right? So I'm like, yes, I'm killing it, blah, 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 blah. And I'm dumping all the shit in the crock pot. Yeah. I'm dumping all the shit in the crock pot. And then I'm like, all right, now I just need a can of beans.
Danger, danger.
And I'm looking through the pantry and there's no can of beans. And I'm halfway through getting this thing prepped. And the baby is in the car seat stirring, like she starts, coming alive. And I'm like, fuck, because there are no beans. Yeah, there are no beans. And I am telling you what, we're
sorry. The window is closed.
I like ugly cried. Like I hit my back against the wall and slid down the wall and started sobbing because I was like, I can't do it. Like I can't do all the things. So it was like a classic overwhelm. And granted, I'm sure there were some hormones mixed in there too, but that is exactly what comes to mind for me when I start taking on way too much. And I think the reason for me, what's difficult, like what the challenge is about asking for help in that kind of situation, like help me with these tasks, is that I have this unhealthy desire to control the outcome. Like there's this illusion of control. Like I even think about the boys now, like, okay, all the kids really, like, okay, they got to unload the dishwasher. It took me a long time to even let them do that, even though they should do that. Like they should know how to do that because they're going to become adults one day.
Yes.
And I should let them do that because I don't want to do that. Like I've got other stuff I can do. But also I'm like, oh, but then they're going to get all dirty and they're not going to put them away the way that I put them away. And
Yes.
So that's kind of historically, while I have gotten better at it, but that's historically, I think, for me, the reason I have shied away in the past from asking for help for that kind of thing.
I'm really curious. What did you end up having dinner?
I don't even remember. I probably drove my ass to the grocery store and got a can of beans and like messed up the whole feeding schedule. Like that's probably what I did. I don't know. But I remember it was the end of the world. That's what I remember,
Yeah. Over a can of beans.
It was a can of beans that took me down.
Oh.
It did.
It's always the things you don't expect.
Right. It just bubbles up. And that's what I mean. It's like the last little straw, Oh. So have you ever had something similar to that?
Help with tasks. That's the mode we're in now.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Just like all the shit.
I mean, I still find that little anecdotal stories about this come up all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about like, what would be a good example? And going back a bunch of years, do you remember when I was married and we lived in this little, it was literally like a dollhouse.
The cute little cottage.
The cottage in Vermont. Yep.
It was so tiny and cute.
It was the first place I think I ever met Matt.
It was.
Yeah.
That was a fun story.
That's not today's prime story.
Yeah.
That was a fun story, though.
Yeah. There have been many. Anyway.
But just to like put a little bit of gas on that fire, like when you guys showed up, the big excitement was the landlord who lived in the house, like in the same property, had a big septic truck. They were pumping the shit out of the ground.
I don't remember that.
Oh, yeah. And we were out in the back shooting shotguns.
Oh, geez.
But anyway, when we moved away from that house, we had moved our bedroom upstairs. And it was literally like this little A-frame cottage. And when you went, there was an upstairs, but I could not.
Like a loft kind of thing.
I literally couldn't stand up in it.
Yeah.
It was a loft kind of thing. But because the place was so small, we put our bedroom up there. And so when we moved out, we had to move the bed, obviously. And so I decided I could do that myself.
Of course.
It's not a problem until I put a giant hole in the wall and got yelled at by the guy who owns the property. And then tried to fix it. And he got even more mad at me.
Did you?
Because I wasn't sure how to fix it. And I didn't ask anyone for help for that. Because I was trying to be very consistent.
You know what this makes me think of, totally randomly,
God.
is I don't know if you've ever seen that episode of Friends. Did you ever watch Friends? I know
I'm
you're
never
sort of
really attached to that show.
There's this
here and there.
There's this episode where Ross and I think it's Chandler. Anyway, Ross and somebody else. Anyway, they're moving this couch up or downstairs, and they're trying to turn the corner on the stairs with this huge couch. And Ross is like, he's trying to say pivot, like you need to pivot, but he starts saying it so loud, and he's like, pivot. So that's what's coming to mind for me. I'm imagining you like with this huge bed in the attic, trying to pivot it down the stairs.
Except the only difference is I was literally trying to be both people.
By yourself.
Right, by myself.
Yeah. Which, why? Like, what do you think your reason? Or is that, historically, is that a thing for you, that you have a hard time asking for help?
No, it's a great question. Why? You know, there's this little voice inside of me that's like, if you do this, you are amazing.
Oh, it's like a way to pump yourself up.
Or something.
Yeah.
Like, it's really stupid, though, because who really cared? I put a hole in the wall. Like,
not winning.
Not winning.
Yeah, I kind of get that too. It's like you're proving something almost.
Well, and it's a little bit less of a tangible, like a hole in the wall is pretty tangible. But at work, I have numerous stories about that very thing of taking on all of these tasks with kind of this inner voice saying, man, you are the bomb if you pull this off. And the second dangerous part about that is that there's these little seedlings of expectation that you should think I'm the bomb too.
Right.
And that doesn't always work, because a lot of times what happens is you take on all this stuff and people are like, oh, he could handle that. Let's throw him more.
Yeah.
So it's backfired on me a lot.
Yeah. So it's almost like if you are successful at doing it on your own, you make that mean that you are awesome, right? Like there's some, I have
done that in the past.
Something about, or about what other people might make it mean.
Yeah, but I'm recalculating.
Me too. I am too. But it's like, it's interesting what the go-to is. Like for me, it is about control,
Yes.
Or the illusion of that. And for you, it's about being seen a certain way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And being seen as, again, that word competence that always comes up.
Which for me actually kind of comes into the next kind of help, which is what we're calling directional help.
Yeah.
Meaning, show me how to do this or tell me what to do. And so I thought for a while about this, like, I know I've done this, like I do this all the time. And I thought of the perfect example, and you'll remember this. Last spring, I decided that I wanted to redo our guest half bath. And so I painted and...
Oh, yeah. And you literally mean that you did this for the entire spring, like all of the weeks of spring.
No, it took me 1 week, thank you, because I'm a badass. No, but I did. I was like, I had this leftover paint, and I was like, I'm tired of that bathroom. It looks gross. And so on the fly, I'm like, I'm going to redo this bathroom and update it and all this kind of stuff. And so I painted it and all this, and I went and I bought this light fixture, and I was like, I'm going to be an electrician and do that, which it was fine. It worked out. When it came time to change the faucet, this was like, it's a pedestal sink, and the faucet that was on there had like grown onto the sink.
Yes.
I mean, they were so attached. And my husband was like, why are you doing this? Like he didn't even know I was redoing the bathroom until I was halfway through it.
Like, didn't he come home one night?
He's like, what is happening?
And you're like under the sink.
Yes, and I was just doing it. Yes, I was under this. You came over. You have a picture of me under the sink. And so I'm literally like, I cannot get this stupid washer thing. And I'm looking up YouTube and trying to like figure out how to loosen this crap. And of course, Matt's like, you're going to need to you're going to need to call a plumber. No, I am not calling a plumber. So I marched my ass to Home Depot because I needed a special kind of wrench, right? I didn't know where this wrench was. And this happens to me anytime I go into Home Depot. I walk in there as a woman thinking I have something to prove. Like, yes, I know what I'm doing. I know where all the things are. You don't have to tell me, and I'm not going to ask you. And so then I proceed to take, 45 minutes going up and down every single aisle because God forbid I ask someone where this fucking wrench is, right? I did find the wrench.
Of course you did.
But I wasted a shit ton of time. And then I went home and worked on this stupid thing for another, I don't even know how long. And I think I was covered in WD-40 by the time it was all over. And then I called a plumber and paid like $400 to have them do it. So, I wasted.
But my question to you is, does your life feel richer for having spent that quality time with your sink?
Clearly. How could it not? No, and that's the point, at least for me, when I don't ask for help, the kind of like show me how to do this help. The reason that I don't is often that I feel like I've got something to prove, or I really want to look competent and I don't want to look stupid. And this is kind of where I want to tie in like the professional world, because I think it can get really tricky the higher up you get in your profession. And you can speak to this. You've been like in the corporate world too. But like when you've been in your profession for a number of years, or you're sort of like a senior somebody, it's like you're, quote, supposed to know the things, right? And so you have it in your head like, oh. And ironically, I think a lot of the best leaders know exactly when they need to ask for help, and they do it without a problem, right?
Sure.
What's your experience with that, if any?
Just like you said, I think the best leaders definitely know when to ask for help. And I think that observationally, some of the leadership styles or the people that are leading that are feeling less secure tend to sometimes lean on needing to know everything.
Right.
And I think that's a really early part of the learning curve of being a leader of people is, and I definitely fell into this. Okay, now I have to be the expert. And that is such a dangerous and hard and lonely place to live in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like bringing this back around, one thing that I find really interesting about this story of the sink is that the only person that came home was Matt. There was no one else that knew.
Right.
Right. But it speaks to the power of like how we talk to ourselves.
Yeah. Who is it we're proving this to? Right. It's kind of back to your point earlier and what you just said about leaders and knowing when to ask for help and that kind of thing. The reason they're good at that is because they're not making it about them.
Right.
Right. It's about the bigger goal.
Yeah.
And they don't feel like they need to reinvent the wheel or look like the expert. They're there to get the job done, and they will enlist whatever resources they have, and lean into that. And it's just funny that that's a lesson to be learned,
Repeatedly.
I mean, again, I think I'm getting better at that, but that was a recent example. I mean, that was just last spring.
Even right now in my work life, I'm in a position where I'm currently not technically a leader. I'm not a manager of people.
Mm-hmm.
My job is to simply go to work and do my job and then go home. I don't have a lot of those extraneous responsibilities. And I'm also in a place where I'm really just trying to show up and be myself. And I'm not really trying hard. Like if I have a question, I just ask it. If I don't know something, I'm not worried about somebody saying, oh, you're not the expert.
Right. Like how that looks.
And so there's a piece of me that's sort of watching this approach from the distance.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to tell you, there's some magical things happening. And one of the things that's so ironic is that even though I'm not a leader, technically, I end up in a leadership role because that's just what happens. And it actually happens more when I'm relaxed and I'm just being myself and I'm not trying to pretend that I have all the answers or I'm the smartest person or I know it all.
Mm-hmm.
It works better.
It's a win for everybody in the situation, it feels like.
Yes.
Right. And the flip side of that is that, the cost of not asking for directional help is, wasting a bunch of your time, wasting a bunch of your energy, potentially wasting a bunch of your money.
I hold this belief that every single one of us has some special thing.
Mm-hmm.
And just as a person, the curious side of me really wants to know, like, what's your special thing? What's the other person's special thing? And if a culture is being created where it's okay to just show up, ask for help, admit when you don't know something, share something you might know to help another person, it's kind of bi-directional.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, maybe what happens is that little light inside of a person starts to be less timid.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that is what really drives super creative, successful groups of people.
Yeah. And I can't help but tie that to kind of what you're talking about, which is authenticity.
Yes.
It's like setting up an environment where it's okay to ask for help. That is what invites authenticity.
Because
the reality is we all need it. We all need help at some point in time.
But there's vulnerability at times. And you have to be willing to be vulnerable to ask for help.
Very true. So you have an example of this as well, right?
Yes. I don't know if it exactly fits with tell me what to do, but it's another story that highlights the fact that I really at times have a very hard time asking for help. I was in a conference with a group of people, and there was a team building exercise, and we went to a barn, which is great because, as we talked about, I love animals, and we were working with these therapy horses, and there were 6 people in the group and 2 facilitators, and they got us together and they said, it was this beautiful morning on a Kentucky farm, and they said, okay, we're going to play a game, and the game is called Help. And there were 6 different stations, and each station had a piece of paper, standard size piece of paper, full of directions written down. And they said each person will get these directions, and then they need to carry them out with the horse at each one of these 6 stations. And along the way, if they feel that they need help, then they can do that. And it took about 20 to 30 minutes to explain the whole game. Now, in the course of that 20 to 30 minutes, I didn't even realize what the name of the fucking game was because I was calculating the entire time of how I would do this on my own. And these activities were not designed to be done on your own. And at the end, everybody had a debriefing spot. And when we got to me, the instructors just looked at me with this flat pan nonverbal, I've never seen anything like that.
Do you remember the name of the game?
Yeah, they literally did ask me that. And they said, you were so creative. And I can't even believe you were able to do some of those things, but you didn't follow any of the instructions about asking for help. And the thing that got me about it is I wasn't really aware of that.
Yeah, that's another thing I wanted to talk about at some point is how do you know? How are you even aware when you need help, if you are? Because I think that's obviously the first step is even knowing.
Well, for me, the gift of that experience was that I walked away from it on the lookout.
So that's something you've taken with you.
I have.
Moving forward.
Yes. And, the people that I was with, at least 2 of them I still interact with regularly, and it'll come up sometimes. And they'll even say in reference, and it's great. I welcome it. Remember the horse game? It's oh,
you just go horse game. Got it.
Yeah, got it.
But is there a feeling that you get that makes you aware, ooh, this is a time I need help? I'm just curious. Is it something or is it just sort of a subconscious thing for you?
Well, so for me, we're starting to tiptoe into why this whole episode was so damn challenging. And that is because help is this massive title with all these little sub-classifications. Sometimes I need somebody to get me a can of beans, right?
Get the damn beans. Yeah.
Get those beans.
The simple things.
Right. And sometimes I need someone to give me some deeper insight or direction or even model for me how to do something that I have never done before, I have no idea how to do.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, and we haven't talked about it yet, the support is more emotional.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about that first. This idea of like, quote, support help, right?
Like you're talking about IT support?
IT support. Yeah. We all need those guys.
Yes. Nothing against IT people.
We need you guys. So yeah, support help, which I think of this kind of as the same thing as asking someone to see you and really hold space for you. It is not tell me what to do kind of help. It's very different, right? So like for me, an example of this was just this past summer when, as you know, as I've mentioned, I've got teenagers and we've gone through quite a year this past year. And there was something that happened, and without going into details about it, there was a blow up at home with two of my boys. And I had to go. I just had to leave the house because it actually infiltrated into my interaction with Matt too. And so I left, because I just needed to clear my head, which is not something I do a lot. But for some reason, I don't know why, I drove to our elementary school parking lot, and because it was empty. This is one evening. So I'm sitting in this empty parking lot in my car as the sun is setting, just bawling my eyes out. And by the way, I do get it that I'm telling these stories of myself crying. I don't cry a lot. Like, it's not my go-to.
I can vouch for that.
I'm a very headsy person, but I mean, I was so upset. And I think you called me, actually. I don't think I called you. I was in the middle of my cry.
Yeah.
And you called me to just check in and see how things were. And I was like, normally, now back in the day, I would have been like, okay, I'm going to finish my cry and then I'm going to get my shit together and I'm going to call him back. Right. But instead, I chose to answer the phone, which consisted of me literally hitting answer and sitting there crying some more without saying words.
I am not intending to sound like an asshole here. But when that happened, I was so happy. And
yes, she's crying.
But I was happy in a way of like, God, I know all that stuff is in there and it just has to be killing you. And for you to let it out, just let it out. I can take it.
Yeah.
Just let it go.
Yeah. And I did. And that clearly, the tough thing about this for me has always been that this kind of asking for help, all of these kinds of help require some level of vulnerability. This one is literally vulnerability on a platter served up.
Oh.
Like, here you go. I am just this little soft turtle living in a shell, and so.
This is mega vulnerability.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so big. And we'll probably touch on this a little bit more, but it's also a very vulnerable space for whoever's holding the space for you, right?
Yes, it is.
It really is.
Because you know how Brene Brown talks about the armor?
Yeah.
I think that you have to take your armor off, obviously, to be vulnerable and share a hard thing. But on the other side of it, if you're sitting with that person, you can't have your armor on either.
Exactly. And because that's not empathy.
No.
Right?
No. Mm-mm.
It's not possible. That's the, oh, bless your little heart. Ugh. Poor you. Yeah. That's not helpful. So yeah, that's one example of a time I did ask for that kind of help.
Yeah. And that was obviously, I hate to see you in pain, but pain is part of life.
Mm-hmm.
And I was...
Wait, what?
Shit!
I did not sign up for this.
And for me, connection sometimes means that you share in that pain together.
Yeah. Just
like it sometimes means that you share in these super joyful moments.
Exactly. Again, it's see all of me. It's a very different thing than, see the part of me that I like and that I'm comfortable with over here that feels strong and confident and got her shit together, right? Yes. It is, nope, see all of me and hold space for me, which is huge.
Yes. I remember one time there was a friend of mine and we were at an event and I was going through, and you know this story, but I was going through a really, really tough time with my kids and my role as a father. And without shedding all the details on it, I was basically at a point where for a period of time, like even years, I had been living with this fear that I was going to lose my kids emotionally. and lose the relationship.
Yeah.
And, I have not always been a perfect parent, but I have always tried in the best way that I can to love my kids and express to them that I love them.
Yeah.
And so this friend of mine got some news about my kids that they were just asking for space. They didn't want to talk to me. And she came to give me this news.
Mm.
And I remember, it just crushed me. It was like just being ripped open. And here I am in this super raw state. And I don't even know what to do. It's physically painful. And I just want someone to fix it. Just make this go away.
Mm.
And she just sat with me. And she didn't sit there and go, oh my God, sucks for you.
Yeah.
Or poor you. She just sat there and said, I know this is really hard. And God, I know it's hard. And I'm here. And that's it.
Yeah.
And I walked away from that.
Yeah.
That was really powerful for me to see someone do that. And for her, that was kind of a superpower to be able to be there in that way. And I had never seen anybody show up like that I remember.
I like that you call it like a superpower. I feel like on both parts.
Yes.
And I think that ties back into that sort of vulnerability. And it's funny because we think of superpower as being like uber strong, but the superpower here is like being super soft.
It takes a lot of strength to be soft, because I think part of what you have to believe is that even in your softest moments, you're not going to break.
Yeah. Yeah. As evidenced.
Yeah. As evidenced.
And so I'm curious, what is the cost here when we fail or shy away from reaching out for this kind of support help?
Well, here we go. I mean, it's back to the I'm on my own island thing. It's being alone.
Yeah. What's that? Is that a Beatles song? I'm a rock, I'm an island. Is that a Beatles?
I am a rock and an island. Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But the Beatles do sing the song Help.
Oh my God, that's genius.
Welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So you're right. It's feeling alone and it's feeling disconnected. And I think.
And it's so interesting because when I think about all these levels of help, guess what? If I don't ask for you to help me unload the dishwasher, then I'm doing it alone.
You're right.
If I don't ask for help at work, then I'm figuring it out alone.
Alone. Right.
Here we go.
And there's a disconnect. When you are isolated and on your own, then is it truly possible to be genuinely happy?
I think that could be a very personal question, but for me, no.
Yeah, I don't think for me either. There is something so deeply important about feeling connected to people.
Yes.
And just to kind of pull this through about, being in midlife. Now, this is true across the board throughout life, but midlife is a time when we are swamped with this kind of stuff. Right? I mean, we are looked to by both generations.
Yes.
On either side of us as the people that are supposed to kind of know what to do at this point, right?
Yes.
We're the ones that have all the fucking responsibilities because we're managing all of this stuff. And, and then we have these family relationships in particular that can get really messy and complicated. And all of this factors in to being able to find a way into genuine happiness from where I'm sitting,
Yes.
That's what I'm realizing as we talk about this.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the other thing too is this is all going on, and the one part we haven't talked about is there's no time.
Right.
You're just going.
Yeah.
And I have to be honest, if I look at my life as compared to even your life, the one advantage that I have this year is that I have more time.
Yeah.
And, it's really difficult. Like you say all the time, I just want to make some friends, but that takes time.
Yeah, it does.
Right? It takes time.
It does.
And so being alone is not it's hard to get out of that sometimes if you feel like you don't have time and you're just always on the treadmill.
And I think what comes in there is intention because you understand, or it becomes very apparent that your time is precious and what you choose, and I use that word very strongly, what you choose to do with your time matters.
Yes.
And so it's about prioritizing and figuring out how do you want to spend your time, because you are spending it.
Yes.
It goes away. So for the sake of being complete too, there also is what we're calling crisis help.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is the like, okay, take the reins from me because I can't deal kind of help.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
I don't know that there's a whole lot to say about that on our end, but that is a very real thing for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that is just when you literally get to a place of physiologic overload. Like you just can't do it anymore.
Yeah, and the danger is that you could hurt yourself or hurt other people. And so seeking out that kind of help, professional help, is really, really important to know when to do that and how to do that. So back to my question about like, what's the feeling that you get, if anything, or is there like some telltale sign to you that says, oh, okay, I need help here, before it goes on too far?
Well, I'll tell you what I've started to do is again, this kind of goes back to the conversation we had last time, but if I feel that I'm approaching a friction.
Oh, I like the way you said that.
Like I might be about to put another mattress through a wall or get into something and try to pretend to be an expert when I'm not, or I'm needing to connect with someone or just vent some things that are going on. I pause and I give myself permission to do that.
Yeah.
Which is really important. And a lot of times when I pause, and sometimes I will literally stop in the middle of my day and just breathe. I just need my sympathetic nervous system to calm down.
You actually just need air.
Right.
To go to your brain.
And then I think from there, it's just an intuitive thing. And it's a thing that I am still practicing all the time. I don't think I have the perfect formula, but
yeah, no, I don't either.
I'm better than I was. Like, the other day, I had this situation at work where I was just getting totally overloaded. Like it was more work than I could do. And instead of getting into that thing where the voice tells me, you're the bomb, and then
you're going to be awesome if you do this,
and then the resentment slowly builds, I just called him up and said, hey, listen, we just need to have a frank conversation because the amount of work that you're putting on me, I can't sustain that. And they responded fine.
Which is like, way to throw down a fucking boundary.
Right.
And
they were like, okay.
And you're like, yeah. So maybe.
No, I wasn't like that. I was like, really?
No, but that's what I mean is like, well, it's pretty damn awesome that I can do that. Yeah, I think for me, when I can tell that I'm in a space that I need help, whatever kind of help it might be, is when I get way too in my head, which is not saying a lot because I'm always in my head, but it's like next level.
Like, what does it look like when Morgan is way too in her head, or next level?
I was going to say, in my brain, you do not want to know.
Like, how might I know?
I can't tell you what it looks like. I can tell you what it feels like, which is kind of what I was getting ready to go into. It's like this hum of anxiety, whether it's like I'm overloaded with shit to do and I need to ask someone to help me with the shit because I'm constantly like, okay, this next thing, da, da, da. Or if I can feel myself switching into the I need to be the expert mode. I need to look competent here. I can feel there is some kind of feeling that happens for me, almost like, I don't know. It's not a good feeling. It's not a good feeling. It's almost a worried feeling.
It's a physical feeling.
Yeah, I can actually feel it like in my stomach of like, oh, don't fuck up, don't fuck up, don't fuck up. Or certainly with the vulnerability thing, that is like it's just a very uncomfortable feeling. Like, oh no, I've been seen. I've been found out, And so if I feel like I'm getting too in my head, and you know what all of those have in common? I'm not able to be present.
Right.
In the moment that is right now. So whenever my brain is 40 miles down the road, I know that's probably a time I need I need help, or I need to stop and reassess, to see if I do need help.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of like you. I don't have a perfect formula, but that's been helpful for me to pay attention to.
I like what you did there.
What did I do?
It's been helpful.
Oh my gosh. Ugh, we are just full of them today. So then is there a way to ask for help? Like what do you do in terms of how you ask for help?
I just ask for it,
Yeah.
and I know I say it, I just ask for it. It's not easy.
But I feel like but is there something that you need to do for yourself to come to a place where you just do it? Because it's like the recognizing it, okay, I need to do it. But then is there any kind of hesitation like, oh, but I don't want to because I want to look awesome? Or like, is there anything you need to do?
I just have to keep doing it. I think it's like playing a sport for me. Or anything that you're doing repetitively, you just get better at it over time.
Yeah.
And it's feeling less awkward. But every time I get less awkward at doing, one level, then the next thing comes up.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go through this other version of awkwardness. And that can be the danger, is that if I don't pause sometimes to recognize like, oh, look, I just called work and told them that was too much.
And it worked out.
If I don't pause, then I'll get caught up in the other thing where I wasn't successful, which probably goes into a whole other discussion, but it takes practice.
Amen to that. It does. Because it is not necessarily a comfortable thing if you're not accustomed to doing it.
No.
And for me, there's also some amount of reframing what it means in that moment for me to be asking for help. It doesn't mean that I am weak. It doesn't mean that I'm incompetent or that I'm going to lose control, because guess what? I never had control in the damn first place. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's something about the narrative that I have created about what it means to even ask for help in the first place that I've had to shift.
Right.
But then I think there are also times when you don't actually need help,
well,
right? Like, how do you know if it's like, oh, I'm just not trusting myself?
And there are times where today you need help, but tomorrow you don't. And actually, this hasn't really come up, but I think that with the exception of maybe support help, which is just sort of like an open invitation to be yourself, right?
Yeah.
I really like to learn from, when I get help with something, I like to try to learn something.
Yeah.
So that maybe I don't need help with that thing again, but that doesn't mean that I won't need to ask for help with something else.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I'm really on the lookout more and more for is, guess what? Who around me right now needs help? How can I help?
Right. And that also brings me to an interesting question, which is my sense is that people generally feel more comfortable in one role versus the other, being the helper or being the person being helped.
Yes.
Where do you fall on that spectrum?
I think probably more of the one being helped, ironically.
Mm-hmm.
But I can just say definitively that I've not really found myself in a position where I'm very attached to always being the helper. But I know those people.
Hi.
Do I know you?
It's me.
Are you the problem?
I'm the problem. It's me. Yeah. I'm in my helper era. Yeah. Guilty for sure. And I,
right.
For all the reasons that I've said here, but that for me is something that I'm working on moving forward in being the one that's helped and that's asking for the help.
Like, aside from you, I have a few friends that default into the helper mode. And the more that I have gotten to know them, the more I realize like what a struggle that can be, because there's a lot under the hood of that for a lot of people. Where they don't really feel like they know it all, but they feel like they have to know it all. Or look like they do.
Which is like pressure.
Jesus.
It's crazy. Yeah. Well, and then the other thing is putting someone who really likes being the helper with someone who really likes being helped. And that whole dynamic of like codependence that can arise where zero people in that relationship are actually benefiting in a good way. I years ago had a very close friend who we were in that cycle for a couple of years where it was like she was always in this sort of crisis and needed help. And I was always dropping everything to go be there for her and help tell her what to do and solve the problem for her, which is not actual really help, right?
Yeah.
And it was a toxic sort of situation for both of us for a long time. And we had to step away from that friendship for a while and kind of figure out our own part of that before we could come back and, restart our friendship, which it's a lot better now. But, that codependency thing is real.
It certainly is. And that is another element for me that's really important when I think about help it's really a question that I ask myself is, am I maintaining, I call it my own pond, but my own domain? Am I maintaining myself, or am I taking on too much for someone else or trying to give away too much to someone else?
Yeah. And really, what's the purpose that you're serving in doing that? So I think that's an interesting, what's the motivation behind being the helper,
Yes.
So a lot of good stuff here. What else do you have to say? Yeah.
So to recap, we talked about all the different kinds of help, and certainly we're not the experts, but this was the framework we came up with is help with tasks, directional help, support help, which is kind of holding space. And what is the micronutrient amidst this forest of help?
If we were really going to distill it down, I think my biggest takeaway is asking for help don't make it about you. If I take that and say it doesn't say anything about me to ask for help, it becomes monumentally easier.
Yes.
What else?
That the vulnerability that it takes to ask for help is a gift and can help take us to different places that are not alone.
Well, and not only is it a gift, but it's, like you said earlier, it's a superpower.
Oh, there are a handful of people in my life that I talked about one of them tonight. Dang it. I mean, just so powerful. And that really resonated with me because it made me want to work towards a point in my life where I could do that more and more for people.
Yeah, which kind of makes me think it can be helpful to consider the people around you or in your life who show up with that kind of vulnerability that maybe you didn't even label it as that, but there's something that maybe you're drawn to. And I wonder how much of that is vulnerability. And as a result of that, authenticity. And so surround yourself with those people because you become the company that you keep, right?
Oh, for sure. I feel like that's a whole other discussion, but yes.
Oh, yeah. Well, good talk, good chat.
Okay.
We'll keep trudging, people.
Keep going. I don't know.
Keep going, and we will see you back in the mud next time. Bye.
See you later. Thanks for being with us in the mud today.
If you liked this episode, do us a huge favor and subscribe to the show. This is going to make sure you never miss an episode, and it's going to help us grow our muddy community, which would mean the world to us.
See you next time in the mud.